So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the developing leader. And when we talk about the developing leader, we are talking about a leader who is passionate about developing him or herself. And we're also talking about a leader who develops others. When I look at the ministry of Jesus, the essence of what Jesus did was that he devoted himself to making disciples. And he said to those disciples, go and make disciples. In other words, these disciples were supposed to be discipled. In other words, they invested in their learning, and they were supposed to make disciples. Are we in agreement there? Okay. So the essence of leadership, if you're a great leader, you're developing yourself and you're developing others. And then after developing them, you deploy them. And this afternoon, we'll talk about the deploying leader. But for now, we're going to talk about the developing leader. And I want to share with you these powerful affirmations, and then we'll pray and we'll have lunch. I make sure that I continually have learning and developing goals for myself. I make sure that I continually have learning and developing goals for myself. That's very powerful, isn't it? All right? So what's your goal when it comes to your personal learning? Do you have a learning plan? This is what we're talking about, right? What are your growth steps? If I come up to you and I say, what are your growth steps? What do I mean? Someone might say, you know what, my problem, Paul, is I'm not assertive enough. So my growth step is assertiveness skills. Does that make sense? Okay. Someone else might say, you know what, my gap is that I lack boundaries. So in my learning plan, my growth step, I need to focus on boundaries and exercising boundaries. We need to be clear about our learning and our developing goals. Okay? I might need to, is this number 2? I think that's number 3. Can I get you to just control it from there? Because I think my thing is not reaching. Okay. I make sure that I continually have learning and developing goals for myself. That's the first one. Second one. At any given time, there is a good book I'm reading or listening to. At any given time, I'm reading a book or I'm listening to a book. This is a powerful affirmation for the developing leader. How many of you, raise your hand, if you are currently reading or listening to a book? Okay? That's important. I always say leaders are readers. And guys, we have to invest in ourselves. We have to set aside time to develop ourselves. Why? For people to follow you as a leader, you have to be ahead of them. You can't expect people to follow you as a leader when you don't know that much. And some people catch up. So we have to keep saying to ourselves, how can we keep, and it sounds funny, but how can we keep ahead of the game? For many of you in this room, people admire you because of your knowledge. But once they know everything you know, you'll have to redefine the relationship. So we must keep learning. Okay? Next one. I like to voluntarily attend seminars and conferences on my own initiative. One of the things about a developing leader who's passionate about developing themselves, they don't wait until a conference is organized for them. They don't wait until their boss sends them to some conference or seminar. They're always wanting to learn. They're extremely curious. So you see them investing in their own learning and going to a particular conference or seminar. It takes time. Sometimes it means you're traveling away from home, but they still do it. Okay, so that's very important. I appreciate the value of learning, so I'm willing to pay the price for knowledge that is relevant to me. One of the problems we have on the African continent is everyone wants freebies. Have you noticed that? We want everything for free. Free counseling, free coaching, free this, free that. Are you willing to invest in your learning? And you know where you see your culture? It's often reflected in your bank statement. If you look at your bank statement, just have a look at it and ask yourself, how much of this is an investment in my learning? Am I willing to go and buy books, or am I always borrowing books? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with borrowing books, right? I pass on my stuff to people and so on. But am I willing to pay for it? Ask yourself that question, okay? I make appointments with myself that focus on my personal development and growth. How many of you, if I look at your schedule, there's time that has been allocated to just self-development. I'm not talking about prayer. That's extremely important. I'm just talking about self-development, studying. Something to think about. And what I've noticed about a lot of us is we're very good at making appointments with other people, but we're not good at making appointments with ourselves. We're very good at keeping appointments with other people because we respect them, but we don't respect ourselves enough to keep appointments with ourselves. So it's easy for me to say, sorry, I can't meet with you because I've got a meeting with Pastor Taffy. It's easy for me to say that. Is it easy for you to say, sorry, I can't meet with you right now because I'm going to be reading that book that Paul gave me? That's an appointment with yourself. And when you're strong on self-respect, you find yourself doing those kinds of things. The best gift you can give the people around you is your own personal development. It's the best gift. So if you've got anger issues, start reading up material on anger, watching YouTubes on anger, and wanting to overcome that. Okay? I can tell you right now, the people around you will be so blessed. Okay? My personal growth and development is a priority that is reflected in my weekly schedule. So my question to you is, do you set aside time to study? And when is that time? And are you setting aside that time at the right time of day? Because it's pointless doing it at midnight when you're extremely exhausted. I remember I used to stay up very late as a night owl, working on certain things. And I remember sometimes I would be falling asleep while I'm doing it, right? And my wife would say to me, if you go to bed earlier, maybe the following morning, if you do that same activity, you'll be more efficient. And she was right. Things that were taking me 3 hours to do at night, maybe early in the morning, could just take me half an hour or an hour. So it's about choosing the right time of day to do these things. Remember, when it comes to time management, there's conventional time management, which is at 8 o'clock I do this, 10 o'clock I do that, 12 o'clock I do this. Then there's inner time management, which is, this is how I'm feeling when I'm doing the particular thing. Okay? So that's an important thing for us. The best gift I can give my team is my own personal growth and development. The best gift I can give my team is my own personal growth and development. Very powerful. So you're developing yourself not just for you. You're developing yourself for the people around you. You're developing yourself not just for you. You're developing yourself for the people around you. If I get better and I increase my knowledge in my field, the people around me are blessed. If you're the main cook in your house, if you go for a cooking course, the people around you in your house will be blessed. I'm trying to use different examples here, okay? I make sure I am becoming more whole as a person because those who look up to me absorb who I am. Someone once said, consciously I teach what I know. Unconsciously, I pass on who I am. Consciously, I teach what I know. Unconsciously, I pass on who I am. So you can have someone who's very principled, and they're wondering, why are my kids always so highly strung? And you know what I say to them? They're absorbing you. They're absorbing you because you impart what you have. Sometimes in church circles, we think that we can just wing it, but we will pass on what's on the inside of us. You can only impart what you have. What are you imparting? So, are we working on becoming more whole as a person? I'm conscious of my current development gaps. I'm conscious of my current development gaps. You know, it was good for us to do that exercise where we were talking about our overextensions, because often those are gaps. And the people who become really effective as leaders, they're conscious of their current gaps. I remember in one of my workshops asking guys, what are your weaknesses? And I remember a guy struggled to answer that question. There was a guy who actually struggled to say what his weakness was. That's a problem, isn't it? I should be able to go around this whole room and be able to say, what's your weakness? You'll see some people will be able to tell you, these are the 5 weaknesses, these are my gaps, and this is my learning plan. Other people, it shows you haven't thought it through and you're not working on it. Okay? I have a plan to fill the areas that have gaps in my life and leadership. You know what's so interesting? When I work with different organizations, a lot of them are very good and very skilled at identifying the gaps. Few of them have an action plan to fill those gaps. Let me ask you a question. How many of you, one of your weaknesses is procrastination? You procrastinate. That's quite a common one. Raise your hand. Keep your hand up if you've got a plan for overcoming it. Okay, you see what I mean? 3 hands. Right. How many of you, your weakness is reading? You're not a reader. Just raise your hand. Okay? Don't be ashamed. It's fine. No one is judging you. Okay? Have you got a plan for it? Can you see where I'm going with this? Many times we can identify the gap, but we don't have an action plan, a learning plan to fill that gap. Some of you work in organizations where you're forced by human resources or learning and development to come up with PDP, those personal development plans. And you've got them and it's all there, all crafted, all worked out. Right? But are you doing it for your personal life? Just think about it. All right? We're talking about it being a developing leader. I am clear about the areas I need to grow in so that I can attain my goals. I'm clear about the areas I need to grow in so that I can attain my goals. The challenge with a lot of people is they're in denial. And I keep saying denial is a long river in Egypt. Denial doesn't belong here. Okay? A lot of people are in denial. There's an acronym I like to use, DARAN. When someone gives you feedback, there's a process of the feedback landing. So the D is denial. Very often we don't receive feedback because we're actually in denial. We don't want to believe that thing about ourselves, right? Someone comes and they says, you know what, sometimes you're quite disorganized and it just stresses out all of us. And we busy keep saying no, you guys are just not flexible. Okay? So that's the first step in terms of landing feedback. And some people are stuck there, denial. The second one, the A in Daran, and this is an interesting one, is anger. Very often, someone gives you feedback and you react angrily. And sometimes you're not angry just with them. You're angry with yourself. Oh man, I'm not good enough, I'm not this, and so on. And your anger actually pushes them away. And you find people are like, you know what? That person will never receive feedback. So what's the point of telling them? That's anger, right? And then the R is sometimes we rationalize. So someone gives you feedback. I know, but you must understand I'm a single mom. Right? Someone gives you feedback. I know, but you must understand I only joined the church last week. Someone gives you feedback. Yeah, but you must understand I live far away. So you're agreeing with the feedback, but you've just explained it away. And you'll be like, I just want you guys to understand me. But you haven't really had that feedback landing. A lot of us play in that area, in that space. We rationalize the feedback. We rationalize it away. Okay? The second A, so it's Daran. Okay, so the second A is agreement. You actually agree with the feedback, but you don't do anything about it. You know those people, you give them feedback, and they're like, yes, my boss also tells me that. Yeah, my mother used to tell me that. Yeah, everyone tells me that. I've heard that before. In fact, I got a prophetic word about it. But the behavior never changes. So be very careful when you're giving someone feedback. Try to see, is the behavior changing? Because if the behavior isn't changing, then the feedback hasn't landed. And then N is new learning and attitude and behavior. That's the N for Daran, right? So I want to encourage you. Let's be clear as leaders about the areas we need to grow in so that we can attain our goals. And let's be honest with ourselves, what level of Daran we're on. Are we agreeing but never changing? Or have we reached a place where the feedback has landed? Does that make sense? Okay. Next one. I'm aware of the people that can assist me as I develop in certain areas. These are your relational assets. We're going to make all these slides available to you, by the way. These are your relational assets. Okay? Have you ever been in a situation where you're talking to someone, maybe at work, and they're sitting at their desk there, and they're stuck in terms of Excel, and they've been stuck for the last 2 hours, right? And then what happens is you just come up to them and you say, you know what? Your uncle, you told me the other day, your uncle is actually really brilliant when it comes to Excel. And you say that you two are close. Why don't you ask for help from him? And the person says, yes. Oh yeah, let me ask him. Thanks for reminding me. Can you see what's happened? You're an asset-based thinker who's conscious of assets, relational assets around you. That individual is a deficit-based thinker. And so they feel overwhelmed because they're not conscious of the people that can actually help them. What I want to say to you this morning is that we have abundance around us. One of the ways God blesses us, He blesses us with people. People are a reward. If you need an accountant, we've got lots of accountants here. If you need a lawyer, we've got lawyers. If you need an electrician, we've got them, right? My question to you is, whatever growth plan you have for yourself, are you conscious of the relational assets around you that will take you to the next level? Do you know the strengths of the people around you? If you want to start a business, do you know who to go to? Because there are people around you right now who are very good at that. Do you know who to go to if you need someone to help you to develop a business plan? There are people around here who can help. Okay? So that's crucial. And what is exciting is you come up with your development plan as a leader, and then next to it you put down the names of the people who will take you there. And sometimes it's books. Sometimes it's names of people who can mentor you through their talks, through their writings. And we need to tap into that. I'm comfortable talking about my areas of personal development to the relevant people. I'm comfortable talking about my areas of personal development to the relevant people. Are you comfortable sharing your weaknesses with people around you? You know what I find interesting? People always like to put their best foot forward. Let me ask you a question. The person you like the most at work, are they the best performer at work? They're not. Are they the best looking person at work? Probably not. So why is it that we've got this mindset that in order for people to like me, I must be the perfect performer? Just think about it. Because often that's the guardian lie in our mind that stops us from sharing our weaknesses. Do you have a few people, I'm not saying you have to share this with everyone, but you have a few people in your life where you can actually say, you know what, guys, these are my areas of personal development. And you know what, as we grow as leaders, we must be secure as people where we can actually say that publicly, where we can actually say, guys, I'm working on A, B, C, D. Yes, these are my strengths, but these are my weaknesses, and it's okay. Why? The people who are listening to you when you're speaking publicly, for example, when you're leading large groups of people, they don't want to see perfection. Do you know what they want to hear? Me too, me too, me too. That's what they want to hear from you. You know what I mean when I say that, right? Me too, me too, me too. I've been there, but let me share with you how I overcame. That's the space they're in, okay? I like to surround myself with people from whom I can learn, right? I like to surround myself with people from whom I can learn. And it flows with the next one, which is specifically talking about friends. Okay? I usually build friendships with people from whom I can learn. So are you surrounding yourself with people who you can learn from? And are you proactively building friendships with people you can learn from? You know what the problem with a lot of people is? They always surround themselves with people who aren't as good as them. I was counseling a couple recently, I won't say which couple, and the wife was saying to the husband, you know what your problem is? In all your social circles, you're the best. So you're never challenged. You're never challenged. Okay? And you see this with a number of people. You look, if you just study who their friends are, it won't be people who can challenge them. It won't be people they can learn from, because they're the ones that are always talking and teaching everyone around them. If you want to be a leader who's what we call a developing leader, always working on themselves, it's important to be comfortable with people who are better than you and who know more than you. A lot of people avoid those environments because they feel uncomfortable. They feel insecure. You don't have to feel insecure just because someone knows more than you, right? Sometimes I might ask people, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years? And someone might say, in that corner office over there, Paul. And then I say to them, okay, are you interacting with those people who are currently in that corner office? No, Paul, they're in another level. Paul, I've got my boys. Do you know what you've just shown me? You'll never get into that corner office. Show me your friends, I'll show you your future. We need people around us who we can learn from, right? Do you know what it also does? It keeps you humble. It keeps you humble. You know, I've been on a certain prayer journey right now. But to be honest with you, so people around me might think, oh, I'm praying a lot, I'm praying for extended periods. But the good thing is I've got certain friends I know, right? And I know the number of hours that they pray each day, right? And I'm thinking, that's another level, right? The books I'm reading books by people like Z.T. Formom. Some of you might not know him. He's late now. But when you look at the personal prayer crusades these guys would do. So in my mind, I can't con myself thinking I'm this great prayer warrior. Other people might think I am, right? But I can't con myself, and I don't see myself that way. Why? Because I'm looking and I'm seeing that I'm learning from other people who are at another level. Does that make sense? Okay. Remember, expert power is relative. You know what that saying means, right? Expert power is relative. So if you go to your rural home and you show your great uncle how to switch on a computer, your great uncle will think, wow, my granddaughter, she's amazing. She's an IT expert. But you know, if you're hanging out with someone like Ishe over here, you must just keep quiet. Okay? Expert power is relative. I usually build friendships with people who challenge me. It's one thing to build friendships with people who you can learn from. It's another thing to have friendships with people who actually challenge you. You see, I can learn from you, but doesn't mean you're challenging me. So are you building friendships with people who tell you what you want to hear? Or are you building friendships with people who will tell you certain things that make you feel uncomfortable? That's important, eh? That's important, okay? My interactions with people are usually characterized by teaching, training, coaching, mentoring, and transferring of my knowledge. So what we've dealt with up until now, we've been talking about you as a leader developing yourself. Now we're going to talk about you as a leader developing other people, right? Is there that group you're pouring into? You're training them, you're coaching them, you're teaching them. And all those things are different, aren't they? Coaching is not the same as teaching. Teaching is passing on knowledge. That's what teaching is, right? But when you're training someone, training is showing someone how. You see, in church circles, we are so used to preaching at a problem. We just preach at problems. Oh, there's this problem, let's just preach. Oh, let's do a new sermon series, right? But training is showing people how. Are you doing that? Right? Coaching takes you to another level, because when you're coaching someone, they have to actually observe first what you're doing. Right? You're modeling something to them. And very often when you coach people, you're not telling them the answers. A true coach knows how to ask the right questions. You're getting people to think for themselves. It's extremely powerful. So are we doing these particular things? Are you mentoring people around you? One of the things about mentorship is you don't necessarily mentor someone for all of life. So you might say, I mentor this person in parenting, and I'm mentoring this person in marriage, and I'm mentoring this person in managing finances. Okay? So you can actually compartmentalize mentorship. So if you want a mentor, that person might not be able to mentor you for every single aspect of life. So we want to tap into people's strengths and be mentored, and we also want to make sure we're mentoring other people around us. There's no point in being clued up if you're not passing on your knowledge. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have an active system to pass on what you know? For me, it's my books. It's the talks that I do and how I'm packaging them. Okay? We'll be working on an app around that, right? And I've got a system. Oh, there's this body of knowledge. The world needs to hear it. There's a system. Ask yourself, what do I know and what's my message in life? People often ask me, Paul, I want to be a motivational speaker. What's the first step? And I say to them, you must have a message. You have to have a message, right? You have to have a message. And then create a system for the knowledge transfer. How do you create a system? For some of you, it might be a personal website. For others here, it's a blog. Just a blog that you do, daily blog. And after a number of months, that daily blog becomes a book. It's not rocket science. Our challenge is we often don't have a system to transfer our knowledge. Does that make sense? Okay. For some of you, maybe you've got a small group that you run. That's a system. That's a system. Maybe you've got an email group and you've got a whole database and you pass on your knowledge that way. Okay. I like to remind my team members of their potential. It's what we were talking about earlier on. It's where you speak to the treasure in people. You see, it's one thing for me to pass on knowledge. It's another thing for me to help someone to believe in themselves. It's one thing for me to pass on knowledge. It's another thing for me to help people to believe in themselves. Okay? I regularly ensure that people are doing work that is appropriately challenging. It's been found that people with leadership potential, they perform their best when they're doing work that is appropriately challenging. They don't perform at their best when they are under-challenged. What happens when you're under-challenged? You're like, come on, guys, I'm much smarter than this, right? What happens when you're over-challenged? You're like, there's no point in trying. I'm not going to actually attain the results that I want. So our goal as leaders is to challenge people appropriately and then to stretch them slightly. Now, here's my question to you. How much time do you spend as a leader thinking about that? The point that I've just made, thinking about that. Thinking to yourself, am I challenging Pastor Taffy enough? I have to always be doing it, I'll be honest with you. I have to think to myself, in the church in Joburg, there's so many guys who can teach. How do I make sure that I'm always stretching them and giving them those opportunities? Right? Oh, how can I make sure that Pastor Taffy doesn't end up in a situation where he's only celebrated, his gift is only celebrated when he does Toastmasters or when he's with Campus Crusade for Christ, and he's not celebrated in the church? How can I make sure I'm stretching him? How can I make sure that Loazi isn't just running around doing what he was doing last year? How can we stretch him and give him targets where we say, build a team around you so that this year is not the same as last year? How do we do it? I have to think about that all the time. Otherwise, I'm telling you, what happens is people get demotivated. People end up thinking like, you know what, I get stretched at work, but when I come to church, I can do this thing with my eyes closed. One of the key tools to use is giving people feedback, by the way, so that they keep going to their next level of excellence. Otherwise, everything that happens in a church setting will be second rate. Okay? I promptly correct situations where people are under-challenged in their work. I promptly correct situations where people are under-challenged in their work. So when I see that someone is under-challenged and they're demotivated, am I correcting that quickly? Am I correcting it quickly? Just think about it a bit, and maybe it's a question you can write for yourself. How challenged are the people under me? And I'm talking about good challenge. Are they appropriately challenged? And what can I do about it? What can I do about it? How many of you here in the church setting would like to be stretched a bit more? You kind of feel what you're doing is very easy. You want to go to your next level. Just raise your hand. Okay? Okay, cool. That's fine. Noted. Okay? How many of you at work right now are in that situation where you feel like you can do things with your eyes closed and you want to be stretched a little bit? Okay? Yes. I still remember some time ago, a particular person in one of my seminars, she said to us, you know what, guys? I kept asking my boss for more work, and he wasn't giving it to me. And at a certain point, I felt like, why aren't you giving me more work? And he says, I thought you were busy. Very often as leaders, we make assumptions. Let me encourage you. If you're that person who wants the next challenge, I won't always know. Sometimes we've got blind spots as leaders because we don't know how you're wired. For those of you, some of you, we don't know you that well. Some of you, we know you well and we don't think you're ready, but you think you are. Maybe it's a negative blind spot you have. But come to us and talk to us. I remember having a conversation recently with someone who wanted to be doing more in a certain area of the church. And what came through was he realized he should have actually spoken to us about it. How was I supposed to know? Okay? I do things to ensure that the people I lead are maximizing their potential. I do things to ensure that the people I lead are maximizing their potential. I always say this, don't compare yourself with people around you. Compare yourself with your potential. And as leaders, we need to be aware of people's potential. And then we maximize that potential. One of the definitions I like of leadership has this phrase in it. Leaders get the maximum effort out of people and align that effort toward a goal. The sad thing is I speak to lots of people and I say to them, how much of your intellectual capabilities are being used in the workplace right now? And you hear people saying 19%, 23%, 27%. It's never an even number. I don't know why, right? You hear them saying that. And my job often as a coach is, how can we get you from that 27% to 70%? In the context of this church, how much of your intellectual capability are you using? You know what the sad thing is? People can be pew warming for years, and then you discover that this person is some super duper software engineer who could have created databases for us, multiple databases, okay? How much of your intellectual capabilities are you using in church? And then, once you've figured that out, ask yourself concerning the people that report to you. Are you maximizing their efforts and their potential? See, if we've only got 14% of Ishe's potential, 2% of Tso's potential, 3% of Gracious's potential, we might be a big crowd of leaders in this room right now. But what are we doing? Many times people give their best at work. Let's be honest. We dress nicely in our jobs. We talk nicely. We give them our best in terms of our intellect. But when it comes to church and home, we give them our leftovers. Our leftovers intellectually, our leftovers emotionally, and our leftovers sometimes physically. So you see people walking into church and they're like zombies, and they're just going through the motions. Oh, okay, let's pray now. Okay, let's worship. You know what I'm talking about, okay? They're here, but they're not here. Guys, let's make a decision that we model this. We model the whole concept of living out our potential in ministry, and you'll see it flowing downwards. Okay? I always like it when you start a team and you basically say, do I have you, not just head, hands, and feet? Do I also have you heart and soul? A lot of times you don't have people heart and soul. When you're a developing leader, that's what you get, heart and soul, right? I often link people up with resources that can facilitate their development. You see, as their leader, you don't have to have all the answers, but you can master the art of pointing them in the right direction, okay? So for example, where's Emma Banda? Okay, she did that just recently because the question came up, right? It was something to do with salvation. This last from the other Sunday, right? Came up in her group, and what did she do? She contacted us for answers, and that's what I've said. I've said this to the Go Group leaders, guys. You don't have to have all the answers, but you can go to the right places, right? Sometimes I don't have the answer, but what do? I pass on resources. I pass on the material, right? So are we linking up our people with that information? And let me say something. We're not in this ministry, we mustn't operate in silos. Just because you're in Pretoria East or you're in Joburg or you're in Highveld doesn't mean that you only get information from that silo. Does that make sense? The part of the purpose of having gatherings like this is so that we connect with each other, right? So Samantha, right, should be talking to Stuart, and Stuart should be talking to Samantha. And they should both be talking to people like Ishe to say, hey guys, what are you using for backing tracks? What are you using for lyric videos? So that instead of each person downloading for themselves, we've actually got a pool, we've got a portal where we're sharing that information, especially between Pretoria East and Joburg, where we're both doing these kinds of activities. Does that make sense? Okay, that's the power of these gatherings. Do we know who to go to for what? Do you know what that actually is? It's a form of organizational politics. Not all politics is bad. How many of you are people who've said, I hate politics in terms of corporate politics? Many people say that, don't they? Nothing wrong with politics. Politics is just the management of power. Politics is how to get things done by unsanctioned means. Not illegal means, unsanctioned means. Right? That's what politics is. There's illegitimate politics, and there's positive politics or legitimate politics. Right? Politics is knowing if I need to get A, B, C, D done, this is who I should speak to, especially when you want to fast track things. Right? This is who you go to when you want things to happen quickly. That's politics, and nothing wrong with that. So, are you a leader who is linking people up with resources to facilitate their development? And you know that when you do that very well, you know what ends up happening? There's a loyalty that develops, isn't there? People are like, oh, this is the go-to person for this. This is the go-to person for that. And you want to be that for people. You want to be that for people. Right now, here, some of you are the go-to person when it comes to health issues. Raise your hand if you're a go-to person when it comes to health issues. People come to you for health issues. Raise it up high so we can see you and we can use you. Okay? Tracy, Cindy, Malope, Chili. Okay? That's important. How many of you are the go-to person when it comes to exercise and fitness? Okay? Okay? How many of you are the go-to person when it comes to accounting? People come to you when they want their books sorted and so on. How many of you are the go-to person when it comes to theology? When people have a theological question, they come to you because of your knowledge of the Bible. Why aren't people putting their hands up? That's fine. That's okay. You're the go-to person for things. All right? That's important. So let's link people up with resources. If I don't have the answer, I'll take you to where you can find the answer. Let's have a look at the next one. As a coaching leader, I act as a mirror by regularly giving my team members feedback. This is so crucial. One of the feedback models we like to use is SBI or SBI squared. Situation, behavior, impact, and improvement. Let me give you a quick example. How many of you here use SBI? Okay, that's good. Okay, more of us need to be using it. If we're part of a drama team and you've been pitching up late and I'm heading up that particular team, if I go up to you and I say, you know what, I've got an issue with the fact that you've been coming late and I don't think you're that committed. You seem to have an issue with commitment levels, right? If I say that to you, is that feedback? It's not feedback, it's a judgment. Because we're going to start having an argument about your commitment levels, right? I know I'm really committed, Paul. Those chairs that you're sitting on, I was the one who purchased them with my own cash. Then we have an argument about that instead of you being late. So how would you use SBI there? With SBI, you'd start off with the situation. Situation is the same as context, okay? So you would typically say, oh, let's say it's Ishe. Ishe, do you remember 3 months ago at the AGM that we had? We all agreed that we're going to shift rehearsal times from 4 p.m. to 3 p.m. Do you remember that? And we all agreed, didn't we? Yes. That's situation. Then the B is behavior. For something to be behavior, it must be observable. It must be something you can record, either with an audio recording or a camera, visual recording, okay? So the behavior might be, I've observed that in the last 3 rehearsals that we've had, you've arrived after 3:30. So if there was CCTV camera there, you'd see Ishe 3:33, 3:34, 3:52, right? You can't argue with it. I'm not making a judgment. I'm not saying you're lazy. I'm not saying you're not committed. I'm basically saying this is it. And then I is impact. Impact. And impact can happen at multiple levels. I can say the impact it's having on me is I feel really stressed out, especially during the first act, because I rely on you heavily for that. Okay? Impact number 2. I'm also a bit concerned that the younger actors and actresses might follow suit and also start coming late. Impact number 3, I'm concerned about how this is going to affect your personal brand. So sometimes it's good to talk about impact for the person's sake, not just impact on myself. Does that make sense? Okay. And then the second I, that's why we like to call it SBII or SBI squared, because the second I is improvement. And it's not always necessary, but sometimes it's good to bring it in. So from now onwards, can we have a thing where you come 10 minutes early so we can go, we can have a dry run? Does that make sense? Okay. So that's how you would use SBI, and sometimes it's good to actually craft your feedback beforehand so that you're not making judgments. Okay. SBI, by the way, can also be used positively. So if you want to give feedback to someone for a presentation they've done, you don't just say, great talk. You can actually say, remember last week when you were giving that sales presentation? That's the S. B, I observed that each statement you made, you backed with data and also an illustration. I also noticed that you kept on asking me if I had anything to add or subtract. Okay, that's the actual behavior, it's observable. Then the I, impact. Sure, I felt really included as part of your team. I feel like I belong. I'm looking forward to working with you. Please keep doing that. For feedback to be feedback, it must be something you can replicate. If you just say to me, great talk, I don't know what to replicate. By the way, there's nothing wrong with saying great talk, but don't call it feedback. Rather call it a word of encouragement or a compliment. Does that make sense? Okay. As a coaching leader, I enable my team members to reflect on their own behavior and performance. You see, leadership is not just about telling people what to do and what they did wrong. Leadership is also about getting people to assess themselves. One of the most powerful feedback questions to ask someone is sometimes getting them to do self-feedback. So you literally just say to them, how do you think you did? Can you see what you're doing? You're creating an environment where people are reflecting on themselves. Okay? One of the marks of great teams is self-assessment. Great teams assess themselves. They don't wait for a coach from the outside to give them feedback. They're already assessing themselves. That favorite soccer team of yours, what happens when someone is not passing? People are already giving each other feedback. They don't wait until halftime. How good is your team at doing this? Self-assessment. Okay? I'm energized as I actively seek out opportunities for others. Have you noticed that people love this? When you're the kind of leader who's so passionate about the growth of your people. One of the marks of a servant leader is this. The people who report to me, have they grown as people? Have they grown as people? See, many people think leadership is just about getting results through people. It's not. It's about growing people. One of the basic needs people have is growth. And great leaders are constantly seeking out opportunities for others. Have you noticed that we're drawn to people when there's that mindset of, it's not just about him? We kind of feel like the person thinks about other people and is actively looking for opportunities for them. This is actually one of the marks of a great mentor. It's what we call sponsorship. What's a sponsor? We're not talking about financial sponsorship, but a function of mentorship is sponsorship. Wherever you are, whenever you're in meetings, you're always thinking, let's say I'm mentoring John. I'm always like, oh, guys, you must use John for this. He'll be really good. Oh, guys, you know what? I've got a guy who's under me who's really brilliant. Yeah, his name is John Gravenston. You must use him for this. That's sponsorship. Are we doing that for our people? That's what a developing leader does. Okay? I'm effective at acting as a buffer for junior people. One of the things mentors do, they often act as buffers. So instead of just saying, Sipo, can you go and ask Merciful for this and this and this? I might say, Sipo, let me be a buffer for you. Let me just prime her first so that it's easier for you. That's buffering. Sometimes when you're buffering, you're filtering what's coming from above. So you don't say everything to the person. So let's say your boss is really angry, right? You won't necessarily go down to the guys who report to you and say, he's really mad, he's so upset with you guys. You act as a buffer. And you say, guys, you know what? We really need to press in this area, this area, this area. You're filtering it. And I've noticed in organizations, people appreciate it when their bosses do that for them. I'm not saying they must always do that, but they appreciate it when their bosses do that for them. They're like, you know what? Sure, this guy is such a buffer for us. They absorb all the stress. Does that make sense? Okay. And that's it. So this is the developing leader. Are we ready to do this? Okay, cool.